Hello and welcome to Curator with a Camera. I'm Anthony Coulls, usually Senior Curator at the National Railway Museum. But today we've got something rather special. We're not at either of our museums, but we are at the Talyllyn Railway in mid-Wales to look at Talyllyn Railway No.2 Dolgoch, the locomotive that started preservation. We're here at the Talyllyn Railway. There are so many parts to the story of this remarkable railway. This railway opened in 1865 to carry slate from the slate quarries of Brynglas down to Talyllyn Wharf. From 1910 it was owned by the local MP, Sir Henry Haydon-Jones, who also owned quarries. And Haydon-Jones vowed that as long as he was alive, the train service would run. Now, that meant the Talyllyn just carried on doing what it had done for decades. So quietly and so under the radar that at nationalisation in 1948, it had already been assumed that it had closed. So unlike the neighbouring Corris Railway, which as part of the Great Western Railway became part of British Railways, the Talyllyn, just over the hill, carried on doing what it was doing. But in the autumn of 1950, Haydon-Jones died. A group of enthusiasts, including the transport author and historian Tom Rolt, and Midlands businessmen including Bill Trinder, went to see Lady Haydon-Jones, the widow of Sir Haydon, to ask if a society could be formed to run the railway into the future as a preserved heritage line. And they could, with the result that on the 14th of May 1951, this locomotive, Dolgoch, steamed into the history books as the first engine to haul a train on a heritage railway, a preserved line run solely by volunteers. And it carries on doing so to this day. Built in 1866 by Fletcher Jennings of Whitehaven in Cumbria, there is very little of the engine that was there in 1866, but it's still No.2 Dolgoch. We call her the old lady. She knows her own way up there. She's run for nearly 160 years on this line, but she's still Dolgoch. The old lady and the staff and the volunteers and the members of the Talyllyn Railway Preservation Society all love her. So let's have a look into what she is, how she works, and a quick look on the footplate before we take it out on a run. Now, in Curator with a Camera, we've looked at some really complex locomotives from the Deltic and the APT, Duchess of Hamilton, Mallard, down to the humble bauxite. But we haven't actually looked at a narrow gauge steam locomotive from the Victorian period yet, and this is about as basic as you can get. If you ask a child to draw a steam engine, this is what you see. It has 4 driving wheels, boiler, cab. There's a thing called a well tank. The water is kept in a well tank, which is underneath the cab. And that pretty much is it. So, as we look at the anatomy of the engine, there's a very elegant Victorian chimney with a regulator lubricator there behind the chimney, that brass fitting there. And there's other bits that we've kept for appearance on this engine, which aren't necessarily there for it to use anymore. These old tallow cups on the footplate, they were there as displacement lubricators, which would once have lubricated the valves and the cylinders, but we now have a modern mechanical lubricator which helps us to do that. But they look really rather great, and they give our cleaners something to do in the morning. And the engine, as we look at it now, is an evolution of No.2. She began life in 1866 in Whitehaven, in what was then Cumberland, now Cumbria, at the Fletcher Jennings works, Loco works, as it says on the side on that works plate there next to the nameplate Dolgoch. And Fletcher Jennings built a number of steam locomotives. They built the 2 engines, the 2 original locomotives for this railway. No.1 Talyllyn, which is the blue saddle tank, and No.2 Dolgoch. And it didn't originally have this complete cab on the top. It was an open cabbed engine with a weatherboard at the front. But in the Welsh climatic conditions, it very quickly gained a cab. It's a very simple engine. Boiler, 4 wheels, and cylinders. But what you'll notice is that the wheelbase is really long. Why is that? It's Fletcher's patent. So we've looked at other locomotives that have valve gear that operates the valves, and Fletcher's patent valve gear is within the frames here, and it is driven off a set of eccentrics in between the frames which go back to the lifting links here, and then the valve rods come all the way off the lifting links back over the eccentrics and through to the valve rods there underneath the smoke box. So it's really like the valve gear. It's called Allen's straight link motion tied in a knot is what we've said, and it's a bit of a entertainment for the cleaners. But what it does mean is, because it's a well tank engine and the firebox, all the mechanical parts are contained within the front half of the locomotive. So if we look under here, we can see the outside motion from the cylinders, piston rod, crosshead, very long connecting and coupling rods, and then the valve gear in between the frames, and then in front of the rear axle, the firebox. So normally on the other engines that you will see, the valve gear will come off that rear axle and come forward. But because of this long wheelbase and the firebox placed where it is in front of the axle, the valve gear is all confined within that tiny space there. Quite unusual, and as I say, sometimes known as Allen's straight link motion with a knot tied in it. There's a lot of decorative, well, it looks to be decorative brass and copper on this engine, but it all serves a purpose. This engine is very basic, but it runs really well. We have a coal bunker on this side, and so there is the crest of the Talyllyn Railway Company. Boiler, 4 wheels, the splasher there, which doubles up as a sandbox in case we need to put sand on the rails to get extra grip. The steam pipes coming off from the manifold valves on the top here. One of them, this one comes down, this is the blower valve to create steam draft in the smoke box when we're either standing or coasting or raising steam to get that draft through the fire. And then this one, which is actually a copper pipe but discolours every day because it gets really hot, is the steam pipe for the injector. So the steam comes again off the manifold at the top, down this pipe, along underneath to the injector here. And the injector, you may remember from other curators with a camera, or may, if you haven't seen one yet, go and look them up. The injector is a device that puts water from the tank in the back of the cab. This water goes into this injector and combines with steam under great pressure to then force the water along this delivery pipe and through a non-return valve to what's called the clack valve here on the side of the boiler. And that is a non-return valve again that allows you to put the water into the boiler against steam pressure. And this engine runs at a maximum of 160 pounds per square inch, and we'll talk a little bit more about pressure as we raise steam to take it out on the run. And that's pretty much number 2 from the outside. There's a nice brass handrail up on the top there. Again, much more decorative these days. It's cleaned every day. We have a team of cleaners who help get the engine ready, and we make sure that these engines look the best that they can. There's the steam dome, the high point of the boiler, at which the steam is collected by the regulator valve, and then safety valves, a pair of safety valves on top of the dome with the spring balances inside the cab, and then one of a pair of whistles on the front of the dome there. Moving round to the other side of the engine, just a couple of modern things that we've had to put on in the 1990s. The Talyllyn Railway, when it first opened in the 1860s, although it opened under an Act of Parliament, it didn't have a requirement for what they call continuous brakes, either vacuum or air brakes. So the only way you had of stopping the engine was the handbrake that you screwed on. That carried on till the 1990s, when Her Majesty's Railway Inspectorate said, we know that you haven't had one for all these years, but we think it's time that you put continuous brakes. So number 2 and all the steam locomotives are now fitted with a small steam air pump on the side here on number 2, with an air tank hiding in this bunker here, and that air pump, that air compressor, squashes air up to pressure, which enables it to operate the train carriage air brakes. So we now have a much better way of stopping the train, much more under control. And there, another of the pipes is the copper exhaust pipe from the steam pump, the air pump, which goes into the smoke box and again makes a chuffing sound as it exhausts up into the chimney. Lubrication, we talked about those old tallow cups there. The modern version that these engines now have is a mechanical lubricator, and if you look at our Ellerman Lines film of the sectioned engine at York, we also talk about mechanical lubricators there, and there it is with the different oil reservoirs and the pipes heading through to different parts of the motion. And very basic bits that are added on. We've talked about the cab being added to the locomotive. It's got a very tall reversing lever, which we'll see in a minute, and when they put the cab on, it didn't necessarily all fit, so they had to put this box on the front of the cab to incorporate the reversing lever. Well, we talked about the cab and the outside of it. Let's have a quick look inside. You'll see a lot more of this when we go out along the line and see what they do, because this is a first for a Curator with a camera in that we're doing it on an engine that is live and operating on the railway. But here in the cab of Dolgoch, the most basic engine perhaps you could ever see on a Curator with a camera. So there is the lighting up wood, ready for preparation for the engine's trip before the fire is started. It's drying out nicely, ready. And there on the further side of the cab is the coal bunker in the corner, the coal shovel, the poker for cleaning out the fire and raking out of ash, and the all-important cab brush for sweeping up the dust. The boiler itself, the firebox, is pretty standard as we see so many of them. Nice shelf there to keep your pie warm, but the firebox door, swing type there, a bit like a pizza oven. The 2 water gauge glasses, and we'll have a look at those in operation when we've got the engine in steam. The regulator handle there, which is a pull regulator, you pull it out towards you to make the engine go. The 2 tall decorative Salter safety valve spring balance covers, and the pressure gauge at the top there, just showing under 80 pounds of steam because the engine's finished its run and it's just cooling down for the day. We've got a second pressure gauge there, which is our air brake pressure gauge, which shows how much is in both the main reservoir on the locomotive and then the black brake, which shows how much is on the train itself. And then there's a steam brake handle here, which operates a particular single steam brake on the engine itself. And then round here in front of us, that very tall reversing lever, which fits into that cutout that you can see in that box on the front of the cab. So there is our reversing lever. Passing that, we have the air brake handle, the air brake controls, so that is the air brake valve, which is operated by the driver when they're slowing the train down. And then before any of those power brakes were on, the only way you could stop the engine was the handbrake, which we can see over on that side of the cab. The 2 hand controls there, the 2 hand wheels are for the steam control for the injectors, whose water valves are here in front of me, and then the final of those valves over that side of the cab is the small one leading into the cab sheet, which is the blower, as we said earlier, looking at the putting the draft through the fire with steam when the engine isn't necessarily in motion. This large rectangular feature in the back of the cab is the water tank, the well tank, which extends down below as well, because there's a second bit in there, and there's the filler cap on the inside, and then there's also a filler on the outside which fills in a few other bits and pieces which you can see because it's a working engine. The drain cocks are here, this drain cock lever. These are called volute springs, and they are the springs on the back driving wheels. It's got leaf springs on the front, and then oil pots for lubricating oil, steam oil for the cylinders, and steam oil for the air brake, and a small plastic bottle of boiler water treatment, which enables us to dissolve the solids and the impurities in the boiler water. And that is No.2 Dolgoch. We always ask, what's it like to drive or fire one of these machines? Well, this isn't a cold engine in our museum. This engine works for a living. It's here at Pendre Sheds on the Talyllyn Railway. We're going to put a fire in it, and with the help of my good friend Andy Young, we're going to have a grand day out. We're here in the historic Pendre Locomotive shed, the beating heart of the Talyllyn Railway. It's just gone 8 o'clock in the morning. This is our engine for the day. I've checked we've got enough water. I've cleaned out yesterday's ash and soot and clinker. So it's time to light the fire. Ignition keys, slightly different to the car. And let's hope. So we wait for the rag to catch fire, and once the rag is well and truly burning, we'll pop it in the firebox, which we've already cleaned out. So we've got the rag burning away quite merrily, and we'll start to add some wood. Make a lattice of wood in there, so that when we start to build the fire with coal, well, the flames can get through and the fire can breathe properly. Handful of wood should get it going. If it doesn't, then I need to pack up and give my fireman's card back. So that's now a wood fire starting to burn through there. I'm just going to go and check. Sometimes on a morning we use what's called the air line. We have a draft of air that pulls the fire through and helps keep the cab clear of smoke in the morning. It just makes it a lot tidier. So I'm just going to check on the air line, which is helping the draft. So this is Andy, our driver for today.
Good morning.
And he's already helping me out.
First and only time for the day. There you go.
Sometimes you have to just check your fireman's doing what he's supposed to be doing.
Yes. In there. Yeah, the wood's taken quite happily. You can hear it roaring away. So time to build the fire with a coal. So we've started to get some coal on, but that will not be enough for us to raise steam on. So for the next couple of hours, I'll be keeping an eye on that, adding coal as and when we need it, keeping an eye on the pressure gauge on the top of in the cab as we build. So we've lit the fire, just gone 8 o'clock. We want to be off shed 10 o'clock, so we have plenty of time to sort the engine out. So I will be concentrating on managing the fire and cleaning in here. All this brass and the copper and the controls need to be cleaned. And Emrys, our cleaner, is busy cleaning the outside of the engine, all the mechanical parts. And cleaning isn't just because it's making it look nice. Cleaning is part of the process about learning all the parts of an engine, what they do, but also looking for broken bits, worn parts. Andy, our driver, will also be going around inspecting the engine, and he's also looking for mechanical defects, hoping not to find any, but then he'll start to oil and grease the engine ready for the run. And at some point we'll be having a cup of tea.
So right, my job driving is doing a fitness to run exam. So I'm checking that all the motion is all where it should be. Everything that's solid that should be solid. Everything that can move. Also lubricating it. Some parts we grease, hence the grease gun, and some parts we'll use lubricating oil, which I will put on just before we go out, so we don't oil the floor. Some of the other parts I've done is we've got steam brake and mechanical lubricator and the pump. They've all been checked before we light up. And apart from that, it's making sure Emrys is happy, make sure Anthony's happy, that everything's clean, the steam's been raised, and we're ready to go on time.
Well, we're now an hour after we lit the fire, just after an hour. The engine's warm, the wood fire's got through. We've now got a coal fire established happily in the firebox, and the engine, you can see now, has 40 pounds per square inch of pressure. Now, pressure being the amount, the force that the steam is building up to inside. And 40 pound, it's not enough yet. We're going to be off shed in about half an hour, and we'll have it up to just below the 160s. For most of today, we'll aim to have it around 140 pounds there. 120 is a little low, 160 is where the safety valves lift, but 140 is just about right because we need enough steam obviously to make the engine run, but this engine's also fitted with air brakes, and the air brake compressor likes it at over 120 pounds of steam. And if I can keep the steam pressure constant, that helps Andy, my driver, with his work, because he needs to know there's a supply of steam at all times for climbing hills, for starting and using the air brakes as well, so the compressor works, the steam powered compressor works for that. And if I can keep it consistent, then the engine's more economic, it's more efficient, and we both have a much better day.
Here you are, Curator with a Cuppa.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks. Look forward to it, mate. Right, well, we've pulled the engine out, we've just taken water from the water column, we've checked everything's now working on the engine, we've checked the whistle, we've checked both injectors which feed the water into the boiler, we've checked the air pump, so the air pump is working, we'll have air brakes. The safety valves are gently feathering. I've changed out of my slightly filthy steam raising clothes into slightly less grubby footplate overalls for going up the line. What happens next? Well, we can't really go for a ride up the valley without a train behind us, so we'll go and collect the carriages. We're now at Wharf. We've got the carriages, the Loco's going cold, we have 140 pounds of steam on the pressure gauge, which is exactly where we want to be. So Andy's ready, I'm ready, it's time to go. Brynglas. So it's another one of our block posts, our passing places. Thank you. And where we're going to check it again, we'll swap the tokens over so we get a token for the next section of the line, the single line.
Unmanned?
Unmanned indeed. So again, you'll hear that Andy and I will repeat what we say to each other. So again, it's making sure we know what's happening. If we say unmanned or we get a colour signal, we'll repeat it so that there's no confusion as to what's happening. So the U there means that the block post is unmanned. That means there's not a blockman on site, so we'll have to do the token change ourselves. So what we've got here is a pair of block instruments, electric key token, EKT if you're into that sort of thing. So the red colour coded ones are Pendre Brynglas. That's the section we've just come up from Pendre to Brynglas here. And the blue instrument here is our next section up from Brynglas to quarry siding. So we have to put this back in the machine. We have to turn the block post on and we will ring.
You're going to ring him up?
Control to ask them permission first to put this back in and then to take out the section for the next one, the token for the next section of line, because if there's a problem they'll tell us don't get that one out and don't put that one back in. Controller, train 509 at Brynglas. Permission to return the token for Pendre and take out the next one up to quarry, please. Thank you very much, John. Indeed. Speak to you soon. Thank you. Cheers. Bye. Bye. So we've now got permission. We'll put this one back in. And the little needle there will go from train coming from to line normal. We'll put that there. We've had permission from control to take this token out. So we will go put the token ready in the breech. So we will see whether quarry siding is manned. It isn't. So we take that out, Brynglas to quarry. We will acknowledge the machine at the other end and you'll see there on the needle, train going to. So that's us, train going to. Quarry siding, that means there will not be a train coming the other way. Turn the block post off and we go out and we show the driver. So again, for avoidance of any doubt or confusion, Brynglas quarry.
Brynglas quarry?
He repeats that to me. We put it in the rack and wait for the guard. Right away.
Thank you. Right away.
Thank you for the bit of putting a squit-o-watter in it.
That's right.
Classic views on the railway is coming up, which is our perhaps the biggest civil engineering feature that we have, which is Dolgoch Viaduct. It's a very tall brick-built structure across the ravine and it's absolutely gorgeous. We've arrived at Dolgoch, partway along the line. And this is where we've refilled the locomotive's water tank. Here we go. Get the radox ready. And this is how it was done in 1865. Dolgoch. It's a significant location, it's a picturesque spot. And Terence Cuneo, the renowned railway artist, painted a poster of the Talyllyn Railway here in the early 1960s. But it's even more significant as it's a location chosen by the Reverend Audrey for the illustration in the railway series, The Gallant Old Engine. Up through the wooded section now, up towards Gwernol. Gwernol was traditionally the end of the statutory railway where the Talyllyn Railway finished until the mid-1970s when the extension to Nant Gwernol was built. But Gwernol does actually serve the village of Gwernol. which was the village for the quarry, the slate quarry of Brynglas, which was the reason for which the railway was built. But it's a beautiful afternoon now. Plenty of steam, plenty of water, sun's out. He's got a smile on his face. Rocking and rolling, boys. We have made it. We're at Nant, Gwernol. You can see the half twist incline up to the quarries up there. But whilst we're here at Nant, Gwernol, of course we can't get the engine and get the train back to Wharf unless we put the Loco back on the other end. So this is where Andy very generously lets me have a bit of a drive and run the engine round.
It's only fair, you've done all the hard work.
Engineers, train's moving out. Blades over. Very good. Nothing set back. Calling on. Calling on. So I'm just going steady on the run round here using the steam brake and the regulator. Yes, please. Brilliant, that. Always brilliant. We now go back down to Wharf in reverse and enjoy the journey. We've had a cracking little run today up to Nant, Gwernol and back. We've put the carriages back in the shed. All there is to do now is tidy the engine out, get rid of some of the ash and the clinker out the fire, drop the ash pan, pick up some firewood for tomorrow, blow the boiler down to get rid of any muck and gunge that's in there and put it to bed. I started here as a volunteer as a teenager, and now in my early 50s I'm a fireman on the railway, so I and many friends are privileged to be able to work on this locomotive and its sisters on this railway. So here we are, No.2 Dolgoch of the Talyllyn Railway, grand old lady of 1866, first engine to usher in the preservation era, the era of the heritage railway, and the engine that saved the Talyllyn Railway. Thank you for joining us today for a really special episode of Curator with the Camera. And our thanks very much to my friends and colleagues with the Talyllyn Railway Preservation Society for allowing us to have a day out with the old lady. If you've enjoyed this film, why not like and subscribe and share so that you don't miss out on future episodes. Just like us, the Talyllyn Railway has their own YouTube channel with many films you can enjoy, so why not like and subscribe to them?